The importance of learning, applying, and mastering financial intelligence is a subject that can never be overemphasized. I say this against the backdrop that research conducted by Global Capital Inc. is showing that entrepreneurs and private individuals buy debt without understanding whether you're buying a good debt or a bad debt, whether your debt is an asset or whether your debt is a liability. Now, here is a common misconception. Many private individuals stepping out to purchase their first home, they believe that that first home is an asset. Now, it is not an asset if you have to cut into your primary income source to pay for that. It becomes an asset if you understand how to take the asset and make it become performing asset, make it become asset appreciation, and leverage those assets to create wealth. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about debt leverage and debt management. Why? Because I believe that this information will put both the corporate players and the private individual in a much better position of strength when you're going to buy debt or take out a debt using the debt capital market or the commercial banks. In today's concept, in today's lesson, we shall look at five important concepts. One, we will look at income projection. We will look at expenditure projection. We will look at balance sheet or net operating income. We will look at ROI. We will also look at market analytics. The sixth that I'm going to throw in here is important, and we're going to call this debt tools. My assurance to you is that if you take the time to listen to this program to the end, I will give you some critical information as it relates to buying, leveraging, and managing debt. Now, one of the important things to look at when you're going to buy debt is to be certain that that debt is a debt that will cash flow. For a business, you may look at income projection. And there's something that I must say about the income projection because, again, we see many entrepreneurs go about this in the wrong way. And the way you do your income projection, it is based on speculation. You sit at your desk, you make an assumption that the potential of the market is going to cash flow this much. And based on that assumption, you then do your projection. That can be a recipe for disaster. If you're not doing this, you're extracting secondary data that may be very much outdated also, and leveraging those outdated information to make a financial and business decision. That too is a recipe for disaster. The way you do financial projections from a financial intelligence standpoint is to do what we call primary market analysis. The primary market analysis really helps you to understand where the business will cash flow from. And as I come into the program and start to look at your enablers, I will speak more to these issues. Now, this is what happens at a corporate level. At a personal level, it's almost worse because in most cases you buy a debt, and let's take, for example, you buy a debt to take out a home mortgage. And that debt is 101% bad debt. Why? Because you have to cut into your primary source of income. And for most persons, you have to struggle on a monthly basis to reach this amortized, collateralized debt obligation. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't buy your first home. I'm not saying don't buy a home at all. I'm simply saying to you that there is a smart way and there's a hard way in which you can invest your hard-earned dollar. This is why we at Global Capital Inc., we are recommending that you talk to a PFA, a professional financial advisor, a personal financial advisor that can help you navigate the realities of debt. And there's so much more for us to look at as we talk about debt leverage, debt mitigation, debt management. So as you put yourself in this position of strength to be able to do what we call the primary market analysis, to do your financial projections, the next step that you want to do is your expenditure projection. Because it is when you take away your expenditure from your income, you end up with your balance sheet. From your balance sheet, or what is better known as your NOI, your net operating income. Your return on investment is quite another story. I will not necessarily get into the ROI today, but I want to come to the point to talk about the market enablers. And this is what many entrepreneurs tend to overlook. You get into business, you buy a debt, and you set out to leverage that debt. One, you leverage from a speculative standpoint, or two, you leverage from a outdated secondary data standpoint. You didn't do the primary market analysis. Because had you done the primary market analysis, it would have enabled you to understand the market analytics. And from the market analytics, you would have been placed in a position of strength to understand the market accommodators and the market enablers. Because it is only from the market accommodators and the market enablers you will be able to cash flow that debt. This is one of the reasons why over the many years we have been interfacing with clients who takes the debt and took that debt out based on emotions, not based on solid market data. So in many cases we have to help them to restructure and work that entire process because you didn't take the time to understand the accommodators and the enablers. So it's important for you to take note that when you're getting out there to buy a debt, it's important to understand the enablers. It is by understanding the enablers and the accommodators that will help you to be able to cash flow that debt, where that debt will be able to offset the collateralized amortized loan, and it will also be able to put monies in your pocket. Then and only then it becomes a good debt. The icing on the cake is when you take the time to understand how to manage debt. Because it is by understanding how to leverage debt tools that is going to give you the real financial competitive advantage. Now, what exactly do I mean by debt management and debt tools? Now, let me walk you through this very quickly. When you go to the DCM to buy a debt, it is called amortized collateralized debt, which means that one, they're holding your asset. The asset belongs to them, not to you. Two, you have monthly debt obligation. Three, you would have borrowed a principal balance. And on that principal balance, you're paying interest over the life cycle of that debt. Over the life cycle of that debt, let's take, for example, you might have borrowed $100 million and the life cycle is about 15, 20 years. Basing your interest rate over the life cycle of that debt, you're not just paying back the principal balance of $100 million. You're paying interest on that principal balance. So by the end of the life cycle of that debt, instead of you just pay off the principal balance, which is $100 million, you may be paying 200 million or $250 million, depending on the life cycle and depending on the interest rate. Now, these are very important concepts for you to understand because, again, many persons taking out a corporate debt or taking out a personal debt never really took the time or take the time to evaluate the debt costs over the debt life cycle. And even when you come to that point to understand what I'm talking about here, the appropriate tools to one, manage the debt life cycle, and two, reduce the debt cost. Three, gaining access to your equity 5, 10 years earlier, maybe 15 years earlier. No one is talking to you about that. There are many persons today going into debt. Your debt runs a life cycle of 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And most people are saddled with that for that entire period. What we do when we come in at Global Capital Inc., what we do is to help you to, first of all, recognize what's happening and to recognize the legal terminologies, the legal systems, the legal approaches that you can use to mitigate that entire debt portfolio, where you're able to manage the debt life cycle, you're able to manage the debt cost, you're able to get the equity in the asset much earlier, and it puts you in a much better position to start to build wealth. So I want to encourage you that in the event that you are a corporate player who is buying debt, or a private individual who is buying debt, and you want to know more of how the smart and wealthy people manage debt, I want to encourage you to reach out to us at Global Capital Inc. We are currently providing four important services and tools for the corporate sector and tools for the private individual who wants to achieve more financially. And those services are corporate debt management, and corporate debt management relates to everything I've just talked about. We also provide services in the corporate wealth management. And what that means is instead of you have your excess liquidity sitting dormant, we work with you to show you how to up-level your excess liquidity. So it can move from perhaps paying 0.1% per annum, where it can now start to put additional income in your hands because you're now earning 3, 4, 5, 6% per annum on a capital that was sitting dormant. Along with this, we provide services to the private individual in terms of corporate and personal debt management. And by personal debt management, what do we mean? We look at things like your, home mortgage and our debt mitigation systems. We are able to show you how to bring down that life cycle by perhaps 5, 10, 15 years. And also how you can bring down your debt cost and own the equity in your asset much earlier and go for equity leverage, because it is from this point you can now start to think about financial independence. It is from this point you can now start to think about building generational wealth. It is from this point you can now start to think about intergenerational wealth. Asset accumulation and asset leverage, asset management are some of the smart ways that the wealthiest people in the world leverage to build wealth. And we're happy to share this knowledge with you as you become a part of our community at Global Capital Inc. Along with this, we work with a private individual on things like your personal wealth management. One of the things that we have seen is that the majority of persons spend about 49 years in the workforce. And even after spending that long in the workforce, you still leave the workforce worse off than when you get in, meaning that you don't have a strong retirement plan. So many you reach the point of retirement and you still cannot retire because you don't have that financial safety net. So one of the things that we work with you on in our personal wealth development program is things like your early retirement plan. We look at things like your emergency savings account, so you can withstand, any pandemic, man-made or natural. Your investment account, your emergency account will be able to give you the cushion that you need and the protection that you need in times of crisis. We also work with you in areas like your children college funds. You don't wait until your kids are ready to go off to college and then you start thinking about these things. You need to think about these things beforehand. So these are important, some of the important things that we look at when you subject your debt and you subject yourself to our PFA, or professional financial advisors, and our personal financial advisors. Now, I want to say this: at Global Capital Inc., we have a team of persons who have expert in the background of certified public accountants and business consultants. We have legal minds with us. We have economists. And we have a number of lecturers with us. I myself, I would have lectured a diploma and degree program in marketing at the American University. We have other lecturers who would have lectured at the University of the West Indies. We have a number of strategic think tankers that are committed to human resource and development. I must also add that we also have a number of financial leadership programs, and all of those programs are coming to you with the kind compliments of Global Capital Inc. Those programs for 2021, they are free, and it really helps you to understand A to Z in the financial world. You learn a lot about the debt capital market, the equity capital market, the smart capital market, and the credit capital market, and so much more. You learn how the stock market operates. We really dig in deep to really help you to understand so much about corporate finance and trading and markets and investment management. Along with this, we work with you to really help you to understand the policies and regulatory systems that influences how the financial market works. So without hesitation, I want to encourage you to come join our network, be a part of our community, give yourself an opportunity to learn something new. I wish that these are things that the majority of persons were learning at school. So you can leverage this kind of information to build serious corporate wealth and to build personal wealth. I mentioned serious corporate wealth because from the research that we're doing again, we're seeing a lot of persons who are in business, but being in business doesn't mean that you're cash flow maximizing. Our programs are all designed to help you to achieve that. My name is Gary Thompson. I'm a business development consultant by profession. I'm a humanitarian by nature. And I'm the multiple best-selling author for several books, including Manager's Toolkits and Billionaire Codes. My new book titled 10X Branding and Marketing, The Psychology of Doing Business is going to be out very soon. And this is a super book. It teaches you, all you need to know about branding, A to Z in terms of branding and marketing. It's a super book. So I want to encourage you to like this podcast, subscribe to this podcast, share it within your community, in order for you to help us to reach more people within 2021 and beyond. I also want to encourage you to reach out to us, so you can do one-on-one sessions with us and mentorship coaching and get the support from our experts to help you to really understand not only debt management, but really how to build wealth, how to build generational or intergenerational wealth, both at the corporate level and at a personal level. So there's so much that I want to say, but I would only say so much in this podcast. I want to remind you that we're in a period of COVID-19, and I want to encourage each and every one of you to be smart, be safe, protect yourself, protect your loved ones, and protect those closest to you. Be blessed and see you in the next broadcast.